This next part is about finishing off your work, painting it. So far, you could have made this out of airdry clay or regular clay, and you would have done exactly the same thing. Finishing them off is a little different, and so I'm going to run you through how to do it. First I'll do regular clay, then I'll do airdry clay. So the main thing about the regular clay is that it's going to go into my kiln, the oven. It's going to go the first time to over 1,000 degrees, and that will turn this little guy into this little guy. It won't change shape, obviously, but this over here is still mud, whereas this is now hard ceramic and will last forever if you're lucky. But basically it goes to 1,000 degrees, and so because of that, you can't use normal paints. They will burn off. The second firing, I then cover it in liquid glass, and I put it back into the kiln. It goes to a higher temperature, and then it goes all shiny. So a bit like this little guy here. Is he shiny? Yeah, you can see he's shiny. So because of that, you need to use special paint. And what we use here is coloured slip, which is a mixture of clay and coloured pigments, ones that will withstand the temperatures. So your creation needs to be firm, but not bone dry. If it is totally dry, when you put some water on, it might disintegrate. So leave it drying overnight, but don't leave it on the radiator for 3 weeks. So to use the slip, you want to make sure it's got the right consistency. What you're looking for is perhaps something like melted ice cream, not toothpaste. So if it's not the right consistency and it's a bit too dry, and if it really dries out, it will be like dried mud. But what you need to do is just dab some water in, mix it up until you get the right consistency. Remember, melted ice cream. So when you're painting, you need to start with the main colour. So this little guy over here, I started off doing the blue first. And then once I'd finished the blue, I then did all the other little spots. And then I did the orange last on the spine and on his eyes. You'll also find if you want to do a bolder colour, you might need 2 coats. So I think I did 2 coats of the blue first. When you change colours, take your paintbrush and you're going from the blue to perhaps the green. You can take it out, you then squeeze it. Make sure you wash your paintbrush very carefully between coats, and then you can squeeze it so you get the water out, and you can then go and do the next one. If it is too runny, it'll all run everywhere, and that will ruin it. Another thing to think of, you need to let the coats dry in between, and you will see it. When you put it on, it's shiny and wet. When it goes matte and loses that shine, that's when you can then put on the next colour. It shouldn't take long. One important thing to remember is that when I put it in the kiln, I'm going to have to lie it down on a surface, and that surface can't have glaze on it. So for example, this little guy over here has got a matte bottom. This little guy over here is shiny on this side and is matte on the other side. The way I've done this secret message is I have stamped in the my ho ho ho, not very secret, and then when it has dried, I've rubbed in a little bit of the light blue slip. I've let it dry, and then I've just scraped it back so that the letters then come out. When you're ready to return them, put them in a nice shoebox with your name on the top and return them to me, and I will glaze them for you. It could take a couple of weeks, so if you're doing a Christmas firing, you need to get them back to me by early December so that I can get them back for Christmas. So now we're going to talk about airdry clay. So this piece over here could be made of airdry clay. So far, so good. The important thing for airdry clay is that it is nice and dry before you start painting it. For airdry clay, you can use any kind of acrylic paints that you like. What you would do is you would start with your main colour, let that dry, and then put more pieces on. With the Snowman, I started with a white as the base coat. To finish off your acrylic paints, what you can do is get PVA glue and mix it with water, half and half, and then varnish it on the outside, and that will create a stronger, shinier finish. The rules with airdry clay are a lot wider. So this piece over here, you can see, I actually did with watercolour. What I did was I put a white coat at the bottom to create a base, and then I used watercolour pencils to colour this in. I then used hairspray to fix it so that the watercolour doesn't come off. I then on the back used acrylic paints, and then I used a Sharpie to write Merry Christmas Nana. This one over here is green acrylic paint, and then we just happened to have some spray paint, and I went in the garden and I gave it a thin dusting with silver spray paint, and that's made it all shiny. This one over here also used spray paint, but I used a thick heavy coat. This one over here, I have used acrylic paints both inside and out. I chose to do a bit more of a yellow inside, which would make the candle much brighter. Then, if you see, I do have a special bronze acrylic paint, which I then put on the top to make it all fancy. What else can I tell you? Aha. This gift tag over here is a little bit special. On the back, I've got the spray paint with the person's name, who the present's going to be for. And on the front, if you have a little look, you can see that I've actually been pressing in various different sequins and beads while I was making it. And what I did was I actually painted it with a mixture of paint and PVA glue mixed together, and that meant I could also stick on the little gold paper, the gold material that I cut up from a ribbon. My snowman here, you can see, he's got a mixture as acrylic paint as a base. I've got watercolour pencils around his neck. I think it's an acrylic nose, and I think these are Sharpies. Right, you guys, you go and get imaginative and creative and get decorating. Once you've finished, let it dry, take some photographs, let me see them, because I really like to see what it is that you guys have come up with and your vivid, wild imagination. If you've had fun and if you want to make anything else, do check out my YouTube channel for other exciting projects that you can make. Happy making!
Can you guess what time it is? Because it's joke time.
Hey, what do penguins have for lunch? I don't know. What do penguins have for lunch? Icebergers!